No human had ever seen a sky go silent the way it did that morning. Birds stopped. Phones stopped. For 11 full seconds, every screen on Earth turned the same dull gray. Then the words came, in every language at once, spoken by a voice that did not sound like it had a mouth. Earth will kneel. You have 30 of your days. Submit or be removed. In a small fishing town on the coast of Portugal, an old man named Daniel Cross was mending a net when the voice reached him. He did not panic. He had heard threats before, long ago, in a uniform he had stopped wearing. He simply set the net down and waited, because he knew someone would come for him soon. They always did when the world broke. 3 hours later, a black car rolled down his gravel road. The message had come from something calling itself the Conquered. No one knew much about it yet, only that the signal had been traced to a point far past Mars, where dozens of ships sat waiting like patient wolves. The Conquered had not asked Earth to talk. It had not offered trade. It had simply ordered the planet to bow, the way a person might order a dog off a couch. That was their first mistake. They thought humanity was a dog. Cross was driven to a bunker dug deep beneath the Swiss mountains, a place built during older fears when humans only feared other humans. Inside, the leaders of Earth's nations argued in a single crowded room. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to beg. A few wanted to fight, though they had no idea how. They argued in many languages and the translators could barely keep up. A woman with tired eyes and a general's pin stood when Cross entered. "Admiral," she said, "we pulled your file. You commanded the orbital defense program before it was shut down." "It wasn't shut down," Cross said quietly. "It was hidden." The room went still. The Conquered's message played again on the main screen, looping over and over. Cross watched it not for the threat but for the details. The aliens were proud. Proud creatures talk too much. As the message reached its end, the screen showed a brief map of the staging fleet, meant to scare Earth with the size of the force. Most people saw only the ships and felt afraid. Cross saw the coordinates. "They gave us their location," he said. A diplomat scoffed. "Of course they did. They want us to know we are surrounded. They want us to feel the boot on our necks." "No," Cross said. He stepped closer to the screen and tapped the corner of the map. "They showed us where they sleep. They are so sure we cannot reach them that they did not even bother to hide. That is not strength. That is a creature that has never been bitten." The general crossed her arms. "And you think we can bite?" Cross did not answer right away. He looked around the room at the frightened faces, the trembling hands, the leaders who had spent their whole lives believing humanity was small. He had spent his life believing the opposite, in quiet rooms and buried programs the public never knew about. "They expect words," he finally said. "A reply, a plea, maybe a counteroffer. Every species they have conquered answered with words first. That is the pattern, I would guess. They send the message, the planet panics, the planet talks, and while the planet talks, the conquered moves closer." He let that sink in. "So we should not answer with words at all." "Then with what?" the general asked. Cross turned away from the screen. "Give me 48 hours and access to Site Black. After that, I will show you." The room exploded into noise. Some demanded to know what Site Black was. Others already knew, and those few went very pale. The general silenced them with a raised hand. She studied Cross for a long moment, the way a gambler studies a card before turning it over. "You understand what you are asking for," she said. "It was not a question." "I understand exactly what I am asking for," Cross replied. Outside the bunker, across the world, fear was turning into something uglier. Riots had started in 3 cities. Religious leaders spoke of the end. Markets collapsed. Families gathered children close and stared at the gray sky, waiting for the 30 days to run out. The conquered had wanted panic, and panic is what they got. But panic was only the surface. Underneath it, in workshops and bases and quiet government rooms, a different feeling was growing. Engineers were pulling old plans out of locked drawers. Soldiers were checking equipment they had been told to forget. Somewhere in the dark behind the moon, machines that had sat cold for years were beginning to warm. The general finally nodded. 48 hours. Don't waste them, Admiral. Cross almost smiled. Almost. He had spent 20 years preparing for a moment he prayed would never come, and now it had arrived wearing the face of an alien empire that thought Earth was easy. They told us to kneel, he said, mostly to himself as he walked toward the door. They should have told us to run. We don't know how to do the first one, and we are very, very bad at the second. The black car waited for him again. As it climbed out of the mountains, the gray faded from the sky and the sun came back, ordinary and gold. Cross looked up at it through the window. Somewhere far beyond that light, the conquered was counting down the days, certain they had already won. They had no idea what was waking up behind the moon. And they had no idea that humanity, when cornered, does not kneel. It builds something terrible, and it names it after the dark. The shuttle did not go up, it went around. It flew low over the curve of the moon, hugging the dead surface so closely that Cross could count the craters, until it slipped into the dark side where the sun never reached. There, in the deepest shadow humanity had ever claimed, the lights of sight black came on one by one to greet him. He had not seen it finished. The last time he stood here, it had been a skeleton of girders and dreams. Now ships hung in the void, held by long docking arms, their hulls coated in a black so deep it drank the light. There were 40 of them. Some were small and fast, built like blades. Others were huge and ugly, all armor and gun mounts, built to take a beating and give worse. None of them were pretty. Humans had not built them to be looked at. They had built them to be survived by no one. A young officer met him at the airlock. She had a sharp face and sharper eyes, and she did not waste time on salutes. Admiral Cross, I'm Ray's Tactical Command. They told me you designed the doctrine these ships run on. She looked him over. You're older than I expected. The ships are older than you expected too, Cross said. Show me. She walked him through the station, and as they walked, she talked. The Black Armada had been started after an alien probe slipped into the solar system 2 decades ago, scanning, mapping, judging. Humanity had caught it, killed it quietly, and torn it apart to learn. What they learned terrified them. The galaxy was full, and it was not kind. So a handful of nations did something rare. They stopped competing and started building in secret, far from the eyes of their own people. Everything you see, Ray said, is reverse-engineered from that one probe and pushed as far as human hands could push it. Our engines are slower than theirs. Our targeting is worse. Our shields are a joke. She stopped at a wide window and looked out at the fleet with something like love. But we made up for it. How? Come meet the man who will tell you. The engineer's name was Okonkwo, a broad man with grease to his elbows and a voice like a closing door. He did not stand when Cross entered the engine bay. He simply pointed at the massive reactor behind him. You want the short version or the true version? Okonkwo asked. Both. Short version, their tech is better than ours in every single way. He wiped his hands on a rag. True version, it doesn't matter. Their ships are built to fight clean. Long range, precise, careful. Every species out there fights the same polite way because that's how the conquered taught the galaxy to fight. Nobody breaks the rules because nobody's ever needed to. He banged a fist on the reactor housing. We built ours to break every rule there is. Our hulls can take 3 times the damage theirs can. Our reactors can overload and keep running when they should explode. We packed in twice the weapons a ship this size should carry, and we don't care if it cooks the crew a little. Every one of these ships is built to die slow and ugly while it tears the enemy apart on the way down. Cross ran a hand along the cold black metal. And the crews? Rays answered that one. Volunteers, all of them. They know what these ships are for. They know the odds. They signed anyway. She paused. We didn't have to convince many people, Admiral. Turns out a lot of humans would rather burn standing than live kneeling. Cross felt something tighten in his chest, part pride, part grief. He had drawn the first lines of these ships on paper, never quite believing they would be built, never wanting them to be needed. Now men and women he had never met were ready to die in machines born from his fear. He turned to face them both. "The Conquered gave us 30 days to surrender," he said. "They showed us their staging fleet to scare us. They think we will spend those 30 days arguing and crying and begging." He shook his head slowly. "We are not going to do that. We are going to use those 30 days to get ready. And when their enforcers come early, because proud creatures are always impatient, we are going to be waiting in the dark." Reyes grinned, fierce and bright. "You think they'll come early? They already told us we are weak. A creature that calls you weak does not wait the full 30 days. It comes to collect. It wants to watch you fold." Cross looked out at the black ships. "So we let them come close. We let them feel safe. And then we show them the one thing the whole galaxy forgot to teach the Conquered." "What's that?" Okonkwo asked. "That there is a difference," Cross said, "between a species that has never lost a war and a species that has never been in one." He turned from the window. "The Conquered has won 1,000 easy fights. We have spent our entire history losing hard ones and surviving anyway. They do not know what that does to a people. They are about to learn." For 3 days, Sight Black became a hive. Crews ran drills until they dropped. Weapons were tested and tuned. Cross walked the decks himself, learning faces, learning names, building the strange family that forms only among people who have agreed to die together. On the 4th day, the long-range sensors caught movement. A small Conquered squadron had broken from the staging fleet and was burning hard toward Earth. Early, just as Cross had said. He stood on the bridge of his command ship, the largest and ugliest of them all, and looked at the approaching dots on the screen. "They're coming to collect," Reyes said softly. "Yes," Cross said. He felt no fear, only a cold and ancient calm. "Wake the Armada. It's time the galaxy met us properly." Behind the moon, 40 black ships came alive at once. The Conquered squadron commander was bored. His name, as much as it could be said in human sounds, was Soon, and he had performed this same duty 40 times across 40 worlds. Fly in, show force, watch the primitives crumble, collect the surrender, move on. It was almost a ritual now, dull and easy, like stepping on insects. His 6 ships slid past Mars in a neat, proud line. Their hulls shone silver. Their weapons were elegant things, beams of light that could cut a mountain in half from a great distance. They never had to get close. Getting close was for savages. The Conquered fought like surgeons, clean and far away, and no species had ever made them bleed. "Scan the planet," Soon ordered. "Find their leaders. We will give them the honor of surrendering directly to me." His sensor officer worked for a moment, then went very still. "Commander," the officer said, "the planet is not the threat. Behind their moon there are objects, many objects, and they are moving toward us." Soon almost laughed. "Debris, rocks, these creatures cannot even leave their own orbit properly." "They are not rocks, Commander, they are ships." That word did not fit. It refused to fit. The Conquered's record said humanity had no warships, no fleet, nothing but flimsy little craft that could barely reach their own moon. Soon ordered the image put on the main display, certain it was an error. It was not an error. 40 black shapes rose from the lunar shadow like something climbing out of a grave. They were ugly, blunt, bristling with too many guns, and they were coming straight at his squadron without slowing, without hailing, without the slightest hint of fear. For the first time in his long career, Soon felt something cold move through him. "Hail them," he snapped. "Remind them of their place." The reply came back in plain words, in the Conquered's own language, which the humans should not have known. The voice was calm and old. "This is Admiral Cross of the Black Armada. You came to make us kneel. Come closer, and we will show you how humans say no." Soon's pride burned away his fear. "Insolent animals, destroy them. Long range. I want them gone before they reach effective distance." The Conquered ships opened fire. Beams of brilliant light lanced across the dark, precise and deadly, aimed to cut the human ships apart from far away where humans could not possibly strike back. And the Black Armada did the one thing no enemy had ever done. It charged. "Close the distance," Cross said, his voice steady on every human bridge at once. "Get inside their range. Make this ugly. Make it the kind of fight they've never had to win." The black ships did not dodge the beams politely. They angered through them. Armor glowed and cracked and held. One human ship took a beam straight across its bow and kept coming, trailing fire, guns already swinging into line. The conquered weapons were built to kill at distance with single clean shots. They were not built for a brawl. They needed time to recharge, time to aim, time the humans refused to give. The Armada crashed into the conquered line like a fist. Up close, everything changed. Human weapons were crude, but they were many, and they did not need to be elegant when the enemy was right there. Cannons roared. Clouds of metal slugs tore into silver hulls. Missiles that the conquered would have shot down easily at long range now had no time to be stopped. A conquered ship tried to pull back to regain distance, the only tactic it knew, and a human blade ship rammed its engines and broke them. Soon watched in horror as his neat, perfect formation dissolved into a knife fight in the dark. His ships were faster, but speed meant nothing when the enemy clung to you like a wild animal. They were better armed at range, but range was gone. Every rule of war he had ever known assumed a polite enemy who fought the proper way. The humans were not polite. A human ship lost half its hull and kept firing from the half that remained. Another, its bridge cracked open to space, drove itself into a conquered vessel and detonated its overloaded reactor, taking the enemy with it. The crews did not flee. They did not surrender. They fought with a fury that the conquered's victims had never possessed, because the conquered had only ever fought the weak and the weak break. Humans did not break. Humans got worse. "Pull back," Soon screamed. "All ships pull back to the staging fleet." But pulling back meant turning. Turning meant showing your engines. And the moment the conquered ships turned to run, the Black Armada fell on their exposed backs and tore them apart one by one. Cross watched the silver ships die from his command bridge. He felt no joy. He felt only the grim weight of a thing he had known would come and had hoped never to do. Beside him, Reyes called out targets in a hard, clear voice. Below decks, Okonkwo kept the wounded ships fighting long past when they should have gone dark. Of the 6 conquered ships, 5 were destroyed. Soon's vessel alone limped away, broken and burning, fast enough to escape only because Cross let it. "Let him run," Cross said when Reyes asked. "I want him to reach the staging fleet. I want him to tell them what he saw. I want the whole galaxy to hear it from someone who was there." The battle ended in silence and drifting wreckage. The Black Armada had lost 4 ships and the brave souls aboard them. The conquered had lost something far greater. It had lost the only thing that had kept its empire standing for 1,000 years. It had lost the belief that it could not be hurt. On Earth, the gray sky was gone. People looked up and for the first time were not afraid of the dark. Far above them, scarred and victorious, the Black Armada turned for home. News travels faster than ships. By the time Soon's broken vessel limped back to the staging fleet, the story had already spread through every channel the conquered owned. The savages of Earth had warships. The savages of Earth had charged a conquered squadron and destroyed it. The savages of Earth had let one ship live on purpose, just to make sure everyone heard. In the great council chamber of the conquered, 100 species sat in tears of light and argued. Some of them had been conquered long ago and now served the Empire. They listened with a strange, hidden hope. If Earth could bloody the masters, then perhaps the masters were not gods after all. The High Speaker of the conquered silenced the chamber with a gesture. He was an ancient creature, thin and pale, who had not been told no in a very long time. "1 squadron," he said. 6 ships lost to apes who had never left their own star. This is not a war. This is an embarrassment. We will not negotiate. We will not threaten again. We will simply erase them, and the galaxy will remember why no one defies the conquered. He ordered the staging fleet to advance. Not 6 ships, not 60, 300, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust and boil its oceans. They would not bother with surrender now. They would burn Earth to glass and move on and let the lesson speak for itself. The fleet began to gather, ship after ship sliding into formation, a wall of silver that stretched across the dark. It would take them 11 days to reach Earth. On Earth, those 11 days were not spent in fear. Cross sat in a quiet room aboard his command ship, looking at the same map the Conquered had so proudly shown the planet weeks ago. The map that revealed the location of the staging fleet. He had not forgotten it. He had been waiting for it. Reyes came in and dropped into the seat across from him. She looked tired and angry, the way good soldiers look before a fight they do not expect to survive. 300 ships, she said. We have 36 left. Even fighting dirty, even getting close, the numbers are impossible. They'll swarm us. We can't win a defense, Admiral, not against that. No, Cross agreed, we can't. Then what's the plan? Because if it's to sit in front of Earth and die slow, the crews deserve to hear it said plainly. Cross turned the map toward her and tapped a point far from Earth. The staging coordinates. We don't defend Earth, he said. We hit them where they're forming up. We jump our whole fleet straight into the middle of their staging point before they finish gathering, while they still think they're safe, while they're still pointed the wrong way. Reyes stared at the map, then at him. That's not a battle plan, that's a suicide run. Maybe, Cross folded his hands. But every species the Conquered ever conquered did the same thing. They waited at home. They built walls. They defended and they died defending, and the Conquered rolled over them because the Conquered chooses where every fight happens. So we are going to take that choice away. We are going to make them fight where we say, when we say, with their backs to nothing and their guns aimed at empty space. She was quiet for a moment. The jump alone might tear half our ships apart. We've never moved the whole fleet that far at once. Okonkwo says it can be done. Barely. Some ships won't survive the jump. Cross's voice did not waver. Those that do will arrive inside a fleet that isn't ready for them. Reyes leaned back. The anger had drained out of her, replaced by something harder. The crews are going to ask why. Why not stay home with the people we're protecting? Why throw ourselves into the deep end where no one can even see us die? Cross stood and walked to the window. Earth hung there, blue and small and alive, full of people who had no idea what was being decided for them in the dark. Tell them this, he said slowly. We are not fighting this battle to win it. The numbers say we lose. We are fighting it so that every species watching from those conquered worlds sees the conquered bleed in its own front yard. We are fighting so that the next time the conquered points at a small blue planet and says kneel, some young creature in that chamber remembers what humans did and finds the courage to say no too. He turned back to her. We are not fighting to survive, Reyes. We are fighting to make the cost of touching Earth so high that no one ever pays it again. If we die out there, we die teaching the whole galaxy a lesson it will never forget. That is worth more than 36 ships. That is worth more than us. Reyes was silent for a long time. Then she stood and squared her shoulders. I'll tell them, she said, but you should know something, Admiral. They're not going to be afraid. After what we did to that squadron, they think we're the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. A small, sharp smile. They might be right. Word went out across the fleet. Cross expected hesitation, maybe refusal. Instead, the crews sharpened. Ships were stripped of anything that did not help them fight. Reactors were tuned past safety. Hulls were patched and reinforced. Men and women wrote letters home, sealed them, and got back to work. Far away, the Conquered's 300 ships finished gathering at the staging point, certain they were the hunters. On the 11th night, Okonkwo's voice came over the fleet channel, rough and ready. Jump drives charged, she'll hold, mostly. Cross took his place on the bridge and looked at the coordinates one last time. "All ships," he said, "take us into their house." The black Armada vanished from the dark above Earth. Coming out of the jump felt like being born wrong. Metal screamed. Lights died and stuttered back. 2 ships did not survive the crossing at all, torn apart by the strain, gone before they ever saw the enemy. But the rest tumbled out of the dark exactly where Cross had aimed them. Inside the heart of the conquered fleet, 300 silver ships hung in loose formation, guns pointed outward toward empty space, waiting for an order to advance on a planet 11 days away. None of them were aimed inward. None of them expected an enemy to appear in the middle of the herd. For one long, perfect moment, the conquered did not understand what had just happened. Cross did not waste the moment. "All ships weapons free," he said. "Get among them. Stay close. Never let them find the room to fight clean. Make it a brawl and keep it a brawl until there is nothing left." The Black Armada exploded outward in every direction. Up close, the Conquered's great advantage became its great weakness. 300 ships could not all fire at once without hitting each other. Their long beams, so deadly across open space, became dangerous to their own fleet in this tangle. A conquered ship that tried to burn a human vessel found its shot blocked by an ally. Another fired and missed and struck one of its own. The neat formation, built for distant war, choked on itself. The humans gave them no time to spread out. Okonkwo's voice rolled across the fleet, calm in the chaos. "Push them together. Crowd them. They can't shoot what they can't aim at." His own engine crews kept the wounded ships moving on instinct and prayer, patching reactors that should have died, squeezing power from systems already bleeding out. A human blade ship slipped between 2 silver giants and fired into both at once, then rammed a third when its guns ran dry. A heavy human warship took a dozen hits, lost its forward third, and kept grinding deeper into the enemy, cannons roaring from whatever was left. The crews fought the way Cross had built them to fight, the way humans had always fought their hardest wars, with stubbornness past all reason, refusing to die until they had taken something with them. The conquered commander, a creature called Valen, watched his perfect fleet come apart and could not believe it. He had 300 ships. The enemy had barely 30. By every law of war he knew this should already be over. "Form up," he ordered. "Pull to the edge, regain distance." But there was no edge anymore. The humans were everywhere inside the formation between the ships, clinging to the fleet like a sickness. To pull away meant turning, and turning meant dying. Every time a conquered ship tried to gain space, a human ship was on it before it finished the move. "They will not retreat," Valen's officer said, horrified. "We have damaged dozens of them, crippled them. They keep fighting. Commander, they fight as if their own lives mean nothing." Valen finally understood, far too late. To the humans, their lives were not nothing. They were ammunition. A crippled human ship was not a defeated ship. It was a weapon with one last use, and the humans spent it without hesitation. A burning vessel drove itself into a conquered battleship and tore it open. A ship with a dead bridge was steered by its engine crew straight into the enemy line. They were not throwing their lives away. They were trading them. One human ship for 2 or 3 conquered ships, and the math of that trade was killing the Empire. The battle became a furnace. Wreckage filled the dark, silver and black tangled together, fires that had no air to burn in flaring and dying. Cross's command ship was at the center of it all, taking hit after hit, its hull cracking, its decks venting. He stood on the shaking bridge and called the fight in a voice that never rose and never broke, moving his ships like an old man moving stones, each one placed to do the most harm. "Raise," he said. "Status." 11 ships left, Admiral. We've cut their fleet in half, maybe more." Her face was lit by warning lights, streaked with sweat, fierce as ever. "They're breaking. I can see it. They've never had to win a fight like this and they don't know how." It was true. The conquered ships were beginning to flee in earnest now, scattering, abandoning the formation. each one running for itself. Their commanders' orders were lost in panic. A fleet that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was coming apart because no one had ever taught it how to lose, and humans had never learned how to do anything else. But victory had a price, and the price was being paid in human lives. Ship after ship went dark. Cross felt each one like a wound, names and faces he had learned in the rush of those first days, gone now in fire and silence. Then his own ship took a hit that nearly killed them all. The bridge went black. When the emergency lights came up, Okonkwo's voice was gone from the channel for a terrible 10 seconds, then crackled back, weaker. "Reactors failing, Admiral. I can give you minutes, not more." Cross looked at the screen. Of 300 conquered ships, fewer than 100 remained, and those were running. Of his own 36, only 9 still answered. His command ship was dying under him. "Hold her together a little longer," Cross said quietly. "Just a little longer. The galaxy is watching and the lesson isn't finished yet." The staging fleet was shattered. The Conquered was broken in its own front yard. And on 1,000 conquered worlds, creatures who had been told for 1,000 years that the Empire could not be beaten leaned closer to their screens, and began, for the first time, to hope. Silence came to the staging point slowly, the way silence comes to a room after a scream. The fires burned themselves out. The wreckage drifted apart. What was left of the conquered fleet was gone, scattered across the dark in every direction, running for any safe place that might still exist. 9 human ships remained, and not one of them was whole. Cross's command vessel hung in the middle of the wreckage, holding together by stubbornness and Okonkwo's prayers. The bridge was lit by failing lights. The air smelled of smoke. But it was alive, and so was he, and so were the 8 ships that floated near him like wounded animals that refused to lie down. A signal came through the ruined static. It was not a threat this time. The voice that had once ordered Earth to kneel now spoke carefully, almost gently, the way the strong speak to something they have learned to fear. "This is the Conquered. We request terms. We request an end to hostilities. Name your conditions, Admiral Cross of Earth." Reyes looked up from her console, blood on her face, a fierce light in her eyes. "They're asking us for terms," she said, as if she could not quite believe it. 300 ships, and they're asking us." Cross stood slowly. Every part of him ached. He had carried the weight of these ships for 20 years, and now that weight had a price written in the names of the dead. He did not feel like a victor. He felt old and tired and very sad. But he knew this was the moment that mattered most of all, not the battle. The words that came after. "Open the channel," he said, "all of it, every frequency they showed Earth on. I want this heard on every conquered world. I want the whole galaxy listening." Okonkwo's voice came up weakly. "Channels open, Admiral. They can all hear you." Cross looked into the recorder. Somewhere out there 100 species were watching, the masters who had ruled them, the slaves who had served, the young ones who had never known a galaxy where the conquered could lose. He spoke to all of them at once, in a plain voice, in simple words. "This is Earth," he said. "You came to us and told us to kneel. You called us weak. You called us animals. You showed us your fleet and you were sure we would bow because everyone always bows. We did not bow." He let that settle. "We are not a great empire. We are not old or wise or kind. We are a young species from one small blue world, and we have spent our whole history fighting each other, losing, suffering, and surviving anyway. That is the only thing we are truly good at. Surviving things that should have killed us. You built an empire on the belief that you could not be hurt. We just buried that belief in your own front yard." His voice hardened just slightly. "So here are our terms. You will leave Earth alone. You will leave our star alone. You will tell every world you rule what happened here, and you will tell them the truth, that a handful of human ships flew into the heart of your power and broke it. And you will remember, all of you, that if anyone ever comes for our home again, the Black Armada will come for theirs. We will not defend. We will not wait. We will arrive in your skis, and we will be far angrier than we were today." He paused. "That is all. We have nothing else to say. We never wanted to. You are the ones who asked us to speak, so now you have heard us." He cut the channel. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Then Reyes let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob, and the surviving crews across the fleet began to cheer, ragged and exhausted and alive. The Concord did not answer with another threat. It simply withdrew. In the great council chamber, the high speaker who had not been told no in 1,000 years sat in silence as 100 species watched him, and he understood that something had changed that could not be changed back. Quietly in their records, the Concord moved humanity from one list to another, from primitive to be conquered, to a single short phrase that every captain would learn to dread. Do not provoke. On the conquered worlds, the message had landed exactly as Cross had hoped. Young creatures who had never imagined defiance now whispered the name of a small blue planet that had refused to kneel. The Empire had been beaten in plain sight by the ones it called weak. The cracks would spread slowly, but they would spread. The journey home took longer than the jump out, because broken ships cannot rush. 9 vessels limped back across the dark, patched and scarred, carrying crews who had seen the worst of war and lived. They carried the dead with them too, in memory and in name, every one of them. When Earth finally rose blue and bright on the forward screens, no one cheered. They just looked in silence, the way people look at something they were sure they would never see again. Cross stood on his ruined bridge and watched his home grow larger. The planet that had been ordered to kneel was still standing, still free, still afraid of nothing. Reyes came to stand beside him. "What now, Admiral?" He thought about it for a long time. "Now we go home," he said, "and we rebuild, and we never forget what it cost." He looked at the black ships drifting beside him, scarred and proud against the stars. "The galaxy thinks it knows us now. It thinks we are dangerous." A faint, tired smile. "It has no idea. We were only protecting one small world. Imagine what we'll do when we finally decide to reach for the rest of them." The Black Armada came home, written in steel across the dark, a warning the galaxy would never forget. Earth did not kneel. Earth never would.